The massive doors of the Grand Assembly Hall opened with a sound like thunder rolling across mountains. Ambassador John Carter stepped through the entrance and felt his breath catch in his throat, despite all his preparation. The chamber stretched before him like a cathedral built for giants, its curved walls rising so high that the ceiling disappeared into shadows. Floating platforms held the delegates of 12 alien species, each one positioned according to their biological needs and political importance. Carter walked down the central pathway, his polished shoes clicking against the crystalline floor. The sound echoed in the vast space, announcing his presence to every creature in the hall. Behind him walked Dr. Helen Price, her scientific equipment humming quietly as it recorded everything, and Lieutenant Commander Lisa Hayes, whose military bearing remained perfect despite the overwhelming sight before them. The Vorthak delegation occupied the highest platform, their Chancellor Vextar seated on what could only be called a throne. His species resembled a cross between a spider and a mantis, with 6 arms that moved independently, and eyes that tracked motion with predatory precision. 3,000 years of galactic dominance had made the Vorthak confident in their superiority over all other species. To the left, the Zalari delegation sparkled like living diamonds in their low-gravity chamber. Their crystalline bodies caught and reflected light in patterns that hurt human eyes to look at directly. They had mastered energy manipulation when humans were still discovering fire, and their technology powered much of the galaxy's infrastructure. The Zephyrian representatives buzzed and clicked in their insectoid language, their compound eyes studying the human delegation with scientific interest. Their hive-mind intelligence had solved mathematical problems that stumped other species for centuries. They viewed individual consciousness as a primitive evolutionary stage that most species eventually outgrew. In the aquatic section, the Morden floated in pressurized water tanks, their tentacled forms pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that served as their primary language. They controlled the galaxy's ocean worlds and underwater mining operations, considering themselves the galaxy's true architects of civilization. Carter reached the speaking platform and activated his translator. The device would convert his words into the appropriate communication methods for each species present. He cleared his throat and began his presentation. Honored delegates of the Galactic Council, I am Ambassador John Carter, representing the United Earth Government and all human colonies. We come before you today to request full membership in the galactic community. A holographic display materialized above Carter's head, showing Earth as it appeared from space. The blue marble hung in the darkness, its white clouds swirling over continents that held 8 billion human souls. The image shifted to show human cities, their lights twinkling like stars across the planet's surface. Humanity has achieved spaceflight and established colonies on 17 worlds within our local stellar neighborhood. Our technology has advanced rapidly, and we have successfully made contact with 3 species who have chosen to ally with us rather than join the council structure. The display showed human ships, sleek vessels that incorporated design elements learned from alien encounters. There were only 12 of them in the entire human fleet, but each represented years of careful engineering and resource allocation. Compared to the massive dreadnoughts of the council species, they looked like toys. Carter continued his presentation, his voice steady and professional. Human science has made significant contributions to understanding quantum mechanics, biological adaptation, and sustainable resource management. We have ended wars on our homeworld and established a unified government that represents all human populations fairly. Dr. Price stepped forward and activated her own holographic display. Charts and graphs filled the air, showing human technological advancement rates, population growth, and resource efficiency. The numbers told a story of a species that learned quickly and adapted even faster. Our research indicates that human neural patterns process information in unique ways, Dr. Price explained. We approach problems from angles that other species often overlook, leading to innovative solutions. We believe this perspective could benefit the entire galactic community. Carter noticed the first signs of amusement from the alien delegates. The Zephyrians' antennae began twitching in a pattern he recognized as their equivalent of laughter. The crystalline Zalari shifted colors in ways that indicated they found something entertaining. Even the usually stoic Vorthak delegation showed signs of what humans might call smirking. If spiders could smirk. We understand that humanity is young compared to the established council species, Carter continued, maintaining his diplomatic composure. However, we believe that our rapid development and unique perspectives make us valuable potential partners. We seek not dominance but cooperation, not conquest but mutual benefit. The presentation concluded with images of human art, music, and literature. Carter had hoped these glimpses of human creativity might resonate with species that had their own rich cultural traditions. Instead, the alien delegates seemed even more amused by what they apparently saw as primitive attempts at civilization. Chancellor Vextar raised one of his 6 arms, and the chamber fell silent. When he spoke, his voice carried the weight of millennia and the absolute confidence of a species that had never been successfully challenged. Human delegation, the Chancellor began, his words translated into perfect English. We have listened to your presentation with great interest. Your species shows remarkable confidence for one so recently emerged from planetary infancy. Carter felt the temperature in the room shift, though whether that was real or psychological, he could not tell. The other delegates leaned forward in their platforms, sensing that the entertainment was about to begin. You speak of cooperation and mutual benefit, Vextar continued, yet your own species still engages in conflicts among yourselves. Your 12 ships represent your entire military force, while a single council member could field thousands of vessels. You have existed as a spacefaring civilization for less than a century, while some of us have been traveling between stars for longer than your species has possessed written language. The Chancellor's words stung because they were accurate. Humanity was indeed young, small, and relatively powerless compared to the established galactic powers. Carter had known this presentation would be challenging, but he had hoped that human potential might be recognized despite their current limitations. We appreciate the Council's time and consideration, Carter replied carefully. We understand that membership is a significant step, and we are prepared to prove ourselves worthy of your trust and partnership. The alien delegates exchanged communications in their various languages, creating a symphony of clicks, chimes, and bioluminescent flashes. Carter could not understand the specific words, but the tone was unmistakable. They were discussing him and his species like parents might discuss a child's request to join adult conversations. The weight of their judgment pressed down on the human delegation like a physical force. Carter maintained his diplomatic smile, but inside he felt the familiar burning sensation that came with being underestimated and dismissed. It was a feeling he had experienced many times in his career, but never on such a scale or with such consequences for his entire species. Chancellor Vextar rose from his throne with deliberate slowness, his 6 arms spreading wide in a gesture that commanded absolute attention from every being in the chamber. His ancient eyes, evolved for hunting in the darkness between stars, fixed on Carter with an intensity that made the human ambassador feel like prey being studied by a predator. Humans, the Chancellor began, his voice carrying across the vast hall through the translation matrix. You present yourselves before this council with remarkable boldness for such a young species. Perhaps it is time you understood your true place in the galactic order. The other delegates stirred with anticipation, sensing that their leader was about to deliver one of his famous speeches that put upstart species in their proper place. The Zephyrians clicked their mandibles together in rapid succession, a sound their species made when witnessing something they found deeply amusing. Your entire civilization spans barely 50,000 years, Vextar continued, his voice growing stronger with each word. My people have been traveling between stars for over 3 million years. We have seen species like yours rise and fall 100 times over. You believe your rapid technological advancement makes you special? But we have watched countless civilizations make the same claims. Carter remained standing at his podium, his face carefully neutral despite the growing heat he felt in his chest. Dr. Price stepped slightly closer to him, her scientific mind already analyzing the political dynamics at play, while Lieutenant Commander Hayes maintained her military bearing, but Carter could see her jaw tightening. The Zalari delegation began changing colors in rapid succession, their crystalline forms shifting through spectrums that indicated various forms of amusement. Their eldest representative, a being whose crystal structure had grown for over 2,000 years, spoke in harmonics that made the chamber's walls vibrate. The humans show us pictures of 12 ships, the Zalari sang in their musical language, and call this a fleet worthy of our attention. A single Vorthak dreadnought carries more firepower than their entire military combined. Their largest colony holds fewer beings than live in one of our crystal gardens. Representative Kalasha of the Zephyrians rose from her perch, her compound eyes reflecting the chamber's lights like 1,000 tiny mirrors. When she spoke, her words came out as a series of clicks and buzzes that the translator converted into precise, clinical language. Our analysis of human psychological patterns reveals significant instabilities, she announced. Their species still engages in territorial conflicts, resource disputes, and ideological warfare. They have not achieved the mental unity necessary for true civilization. How can they contribute to galactic peace when they cannot even achieve planetary harmony? The Morden delegate pulsed with bioluminescent patterns that conveyed sophisticated concepts about evolutionary development. His tentacled form moved gracefully in his aquatic chamber as he added his own observations to the growing list of human inadequacies. The humans speak of innovation and unique perspectives. The Morden communicated through light patterns that created words in the air above his tank, yet their technological base remains primitive by our standards. They have barely mastered fusion power while we have harnessed the energy of entire stars. Their fastest ships require months to travel distances we cross in hours. Dr. Price could no longer remain silent. She stepped forward, her hands clasped behind her back in a gesture that projected scientific authority, despite the overwhelming opposition she faced. "If I may respond to these observations," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the chamber's acoustics. "Human technological development has accelerated exponentially in recent decades. Our problem-solving approaches have led to breakthroughs that established civilizations overlooked for centuries. Innovation often comes from fresh perspectives rather than accumulated experience." Her words triggered what could only be described as laughter from the assembled delegates. The Zephyrians' clicking reached a crescendo that sounded like insects celebrating a successful hunt. The Zalari shifted through color patterns so rapidly, they created a light show that dazzled human eyes. Even the usually composed Vorthak delegation showed signs of amusement, their breathing chambers producing sounds that resembled mechanical chuckling. Chancellor Vextar raised one arm to restore order, though his own posture suggested he was enjoying the display of human presumption. When silence returned, he activated a holographic projector that filled the chamber with images that made Carter's stomach clench with recognition. "Let us examine the evidence of human civilization," Vextar announced with theatrical grandeur. "Here we see the records of human warfare spanning your entire recorded history. Wars over territory, resources, ideology, and religion. Conflicts that consumed millions of lives and vast resources that could have been directed toward actual progress. The images showed battlefields from throughout human history, from ancient conflicts with spears and shields to modern warfare with devastating weapons. The alien delegates watched with fascination as humans fought humans in endless cycles of violence and destruction. Compare this to the civilized histories of the Council species," Vextar continued, conveniently omitting the dark periods of conquest and subjugation that marked every species' rise to power. "We have evolved beyond such primitive behaviors. We resolve disputes through law, negotiation, and proper respect for established hierarchies." The Ursani representative, a massive bear-like creature whose species controlled several mining worlds, added his deep rumbling voice to the chorus of criticism. "Humans demonstrate the emotional instability typical of young species. They make decisions based on feelings rather than logic. Such unpredictability makes them unsuitable for positions of responsibility in galactic affairs." Carter felt each word like a physical blow, but his diplomatic training held firm. He had faced criticism before, though never on such a scale or with such potentially devastating consequences for his species. The burning sensation in his chest grew stronger, but he channeled it into maintaining his professional composure. The mockery continued for what felt like hours but was probably only minutes. Each delegate contributed their own analysis of human shortcomings, their voices building into a symphony of dismissal that filled the vast chamber. They questioned human intelligence, criticized human emotions, and dismissed human potential with the casual cruelty of beings who had never faced a real challenge to their established order. Lieutenant Commander Hayes stood rigid beside Carter, her military training warring with her desire to defend her species against the mounting insults. Her hands remained clasped behind her back, but Carter could see the tension in her shoulders and the controlled anger in her eyes. Finally, Chancellor Vextar delivered what he clearly intended as the final verdict on humanity's application. His voice carried the weight of absolute authority as he pronounced judgment on an entire species. The Council has reached a decision regarding humanity's request for membership, he announced with ceremonial gravity. We offer your species probationary status within the galactic community. Under these terms, Earth would become a protectorate of the Council, with all major decisions subject to our approval. Your military development would be limited and monitored in exchange for our protection and guidance. Humanity would contribute resources to support Council operations. The terms were devastating in their implications, reducing humanity from an independent civilization to a dependent client state with no real autonomy or dignity. The words hung in the air like poison gas, filling every corner of the vast chamber with their implications. Probationary status meant humanity would become nothing more than a dependent child in the galactic community, stripped of independence and reduced to paying tribute for the privilege of existing under alien oversight. Carter felt the weight of those terms settling on his shoulders like chains. The alien delegates waited for his response with expressions that ranged from smug satisfaction to barely contained amusement. They expected him to either gratefully accept their generous offer or launch into angry protests that would justify their treatment of his species. The Zephyrians clicked their mandibles in anticipation while the Zalari shifted through color patterns that indicated they were preparing to enjoy whatever entertainment the human might provide. Chancellor. Vextar leaned forward on his throne, his 6 arms positioned in a gesture of false magnanimity. His ancient eyes studied Carter with the patience of a predator that knew its prey had nowhere to run. The other council members shifted in their various environmental chambers, creating a symphony of alien sounds that filled the silence. Carter stood motionless at his podium for a long moment, his face showing nothing of the thoughts racing through his mind. Dr. Price glanced at him with concern, recognizing the signs of the deep concentration that preceded his most important decisions. Lieutenant Commander Hayes remained at attention, but her eyes never left Carter's face, waiting for his signal. Then Carter did something that surprised everyone in the chamber, including his own delegation. He reached down and began packing his materials into his briefcase with slow, deliberate movements. His hands moved with the careful precision of someone performing a ritual, placing each document and data pad in its proper position. The alien delegates watched this unexpected behavior with growing confusion. No species in galactic history had ever responded to council terms with such casual indifference. The very concept of simply packing up and leaving was so foreign to their experience that they initially could not process what they were witnessing. Dr. Price followed Carter's lead without question, though her scientific mind raced to understand his strategy. She gathered her equipment and research materials, her movements mirroring his calm efficiency. Lieutenant Commander Hayes closed her military briefing folder and secured her communication devices, her training allowing her to adapt quickly to changing situations. The silence in the chamber grew thick and uncomfortable. The alien delegates had expected either grateful acceptance or indignant rejection, not this strange display of methodical preparation for departure. Their communication systems buzzed with confused exchanges as they tried to understand what the humans were doing. Chancellor Vextar was the first to break the silence, his voice carrying a note of uncertainty that had not been present during his earlier speeches. Ambassador Carter, we require your response to our offer. The Council's time is valuable, and we have other matters to address. Carter looked up from his briefcase, his expression completely neutral. His voice when he spoke was calm and professional, showing no trace of anger or disappointment. Thank you for your time, Chancellor Vextar. I believe this concludes our business here today. The words fell into the chamber like stones dropped into still water, creating ripples of confusion that spread through every delegation. The Morden began pulsing with rapid light patterns that indicated extreme agitation. The Ursani representative shifted his massive bulk forward, his deep voice rumbling with disbelief. You reject our terms? Representative Kalisha of the Zephyrians asked, her compound eyes reflecting the chamber's lights in patterns that suggested she was processing information that did not fit her understanding of normal behavior. Carter straightened his tie and smoothed his jacket, his movements betraying no emotion whatsoever. I neither accept nor reject anything, Representative Kalisha. Humanity withdraws its application for membership in the Galactic Council. We will pursue our own path forward. The statement created a shockwave of disbelief that rolled through the assembled delegates like a physical force. In 3,000 years of Council history, No species had ever voluntarily walked away from membership. The very idea violated every assumption they held about how galactic politics functioned. The crystalline Zilari began shifting through color spectrums so rapidly that their forms became blurred with confusion. Their eldest representative attempted to speak but produced only discordant harmonics that the translation system could not convert into coherent language. The concept of refusing council membership was so alien to their experience that their communication systems simply could not process it. Chancellor Vextar rose from his throne, his 6 arms spreading wide in a gesture that might have been threatening or pleading. For the first time in the entire proceeding, his voice carried genuine uncertainty rather than theatrical authority. Ambassador Carter, you must understand the implications of what you are saying. No species can survive alone in the galaxy. There are threats out there that require the combined strength of civilized worlds to overcome. Pirates, rogue AI systems, hostile alien incursions from outside our galaxy. Without the Council's protection, humanity will face dangers that could destroy your entire civilization. Carter paused in his preparations and looked directly at the Chancellor. His eyes held none of the deference that the Vorthak leader was accustomed to seeing from other species. Instead, there was something that Vextar had not encountered in centuries of dealing with galactic politics: complete indifference to his authority. You may be correct, Chancellor, Carter replied with the same calm professionalism he had maintained throughout the entire proceeding. Perhaps humanity will face threats that destroy us. Perhaps we will fail to solve the challenges that await us in the galaxy. But those will be our choices to make, our risks to take, and our failures to learn from. The human delegation moved toward the chamber's exit with measured steps that echoed in the vast space. Their footsteps created a rhythm that seemed to count down the moments until something fundamental changed in the galactic order. The alien delegates watched them go with expressions of growing panic as they realized they were witnessing something unprecedented. Dr. Price walked beside Carter, her scientific mind already racing ahead to the implications of what they had just done. Humanity would be alone in a galaxy full of dangers, but they would also be free to make their own decisions and face their own consequences. The thought both terrified and exhilarated her. Lieutenant Commander Hayes brought up the rear of their small procession, her military training making her hyper-aware of the alien eyes following their every movement. She could feel the weight of history settling around them like a cloak, marking this moment as the beginning of something entirely new. The massive doors of the Grand Assembly Hall stood open before them, leading back to the docking bay where their ship waited. Beyond that lay the vast darkness of space and the uncertain future that humanity would now face alone. Carter reached the threshold and paused for just a moment, not to reconsider his decision but to savor the feeling of absolute freedom that came with walking away from those who thought they owned him. 6 months passed like whispers in the dark, and the galaxy began to change in ways that no one had predicted. The first reports reached the Council chambers through routine intelligence networks, dismissed initially as minor incidents involving the stubborn humans who had walked away from civilized society. But as more data flowed in from across known space, patterns emerged that made even the ancient Vorthak leadership pause in their certainty. Captain Robert Kim stood on the bridge of the exploration vessel New Horizon, watching his crew work with the methodical efficiency that had become the hallmark of human space operations. They had been investigating gravitational anomalies in the Kepler 438 system when their sensors detected something extraordinary: a massive alien derelict drifting in the shadow of a gas giant, its hull marked with symbols that predated any known civilization. The ship was enormous, easily 10 times the size of any human vessel, but its technology had failed millennia ago. Kim's engineering team worked for 3 weeks to establish safe entry protocols, using techniques they had learned from studying captured pirate vessels and abandoned council outposts. What they found inside changed everything. The derelict contained technological blueprints and manufacturing specifications for defensive systems that surpassed anything in current galactic use. Shield generators that could absorb energy attacks and convert them into power for the defending ship. Hull materials that repaired themselves when damaged. Weapon systems that fired concentrated gravity waves instead of traditional energy beams. Dr. Amanda Foster led the research team that analyzed the alien technology, working around the clock to understand principles that the Council species had never encountered. Her background in quantum mechanics and her willingness to think outside established scientific Frameworks allowed her to make connections that more experienced but rigid minds might have missed. Within 4 months, the first human ships equipped with reverse-engineered alien shields were patrolling the edges of human space. The improvement in defensive capabilities was so dramatic that pirate fleets began avoiding human territory entirely, spreading rumors through the criminal underworld about merchant vessels that could shrug off attacks that would cripple Council military ships. Commander Paul Martinez received the distress call while his ship was conducting routine patrols near the border between human and Zalari space. A Zalari science expedition had been caught in the gravitational collapse of a binary star system, their crystalline vessels trapped by forces that their technology could not overcome. According to galactic law and Council protocol, such rescue operations required formal approval from multiple governmental levels, a process that typically took weeks to complete. Martinez made his decision in 30 seconds. He ordered his ship into the collapsing system without seeking permission from Earth government or requesting backup from Council forces. The rescue operation took 18 hours of dangerous flying through gravitational anomalies that would have destroyed most vessels. But human ships equipped with the new shield technology could survive conditions that defeated traditional defensive systems. The Zalari expedition was saved with 0 casualties, their valuable research data intact and their lives preserved. When Council officials arrived 3 days later with proper authorization papers, they found only empty space and a message beacon thanking them for their concern, but noting that the emergency had already been resolved. The incident created ripples throughout Zalari society. For the first time in their recorded history, a non-Council species had provided aid to Council citizens without demanding payment, political favors, or territorial concessions. The rescued scientists returned home with stories of human efficiency and genuine concern for alien lives, concepts that challenged fundamental assumptions about interspecies relations. Dr. Foster's communication breakthrough came just weeks after the Zalari rescue, when her team successfully tested a faster-than-light messaging system that operated independently of the Council's heavily regulated relay network. Traditional galactic communication required expensive access fees and routing through Council-controlled stations, limiting what independent worlds could afford to send or receive. The human communication grid went online with a simple principle: free access for everyone, regardless of political affiliation or economic status. Within days, isolated colonies that had been cut off from galactic civilization for decades were reconnecting with their home systems. Independent traders began coordinating their routes more efficiently. Refugee populations could contact relatives they had not spoken with in years. The economic implications were staggering. Information flow increased exponentially throughout sectors that had been artificially isolated by Council communication monopolies. Trade routes that had been unprofitable due to communication costs suddenly became viable. Small governments that could not afford Council relay fees found themselves able to participate in galactic commerce for the first time. The 3 minor species allied with humanity began sharing technologies and resources in ways that created synergies no one had anticipated. The Kepler natives provided mineral extraction techniques that were perfectly suited to human mining operations. The peaceful Taucetians contributed agricultural innovations that increased food production across all allied worlds. The aquatic Proxima colonists shared underwater construction methods that allowed humans to establish bases in previously inaccessible ocean environments. Their combined fleets remained small compared to Council military forces, but they operated with coordination and effectiveness that confused traditional military analysts. When Mordun colony ship Peaceful Current came under attack by the notorious Bloodstar pirates in neutral space, the response demonstrated this new approach to galactic security. The distress call reached human space through the new communication network within minutes. Captain Frank Rodriguez of the cargo vessel Liberty was closest to the scene, his ship loaded with agricultural supplies and completely unsuited for combat. Council protocol would have required him to relay the message to proper military authorities and await official response, a process that would take hours the colony ship did not have. Rodriguez arrived at the scene to find 3 pirate raiders systematically destroying the Morden vessel's defenses while preparing to board and capture the civilian population for slave markets. His cargo ship mounted only basic defensive weapons, but the new shield technology gave him options that traditional tactics would not have allowed. The battle that followed became legendary in both human and pirate circles. Rodriguez used his ship's superior maneuverability and shield strength to draw fire away from the colony ship, while calling for backup through the human communication network. Within 30 minutes, 2 more human vessels arrived, their crews coordinating attacks with a precision that seemed almost telepathic to outside observers. The pirates found themselves facing opponents who fought with desperate creativity and tactical flexibility they had never encountered. Human ships used ramming attacks, coordinated gravity well maneuvers, and weapon combinations that violated every standard engagement doctrine. When the flagship Bloodstar attempted to retreat, Rodriguez drove his damaged cargo vessel directly into its engine section, rather than allow the pirates to escape and threaten other innocent ships. The rescue was successful, but the implications were profound. The Mordun colony ship had been declared too expensive to save by Council authorities, abandoned to its fate because the cost of military intervention exceeded bureaucratic budgets. Yet humans had responded instantly, risking their lives for aliens they had never met and expecting nothing in return. Word of these incidents spread through both official and unofficial channels, creating a growing awareness that something fundamental had changed in galactic politics. The species that had been mocked and dismissed was proving capable of achievements that challenged every assumption about power, cooperation, and civilization itself. 2 years after the humans walked away from the Grand Assembly Hall, the galaxy faced its darkest hour in recorded history. The first ships appeared without warning at the edge of the Andromeda Spiral, their hulls black as space itself, and their technology unlike anything in Council databases. They moved through space with impossible speed, ignoring gravitational fields that should have torn their vessels apart, and shrugging off attacks that could destroy entire fleets. The Outer Rim colonies fell within days. Vorthak dreadnoughts that had ruled space lanes for millennia found their weapons useless against invader shields that absorbed energy attacks and converted them into power for alien systems. Zolari energy cannons that could crack planets simply vanished into the strange black holes, without leaving so much as a scorch mark. Chancellor Vextar stood in his war room deep beneath the surface of the Vorthak homeworld, watching holographic displays that showed the systematic destruction of everything his people had built over 3,000 years. Red markers indicated worlds that had fallen silent, their populations either dead or captured for purposes the Council could not imagine. The invaders seemed particularly interested in capturing Council technology intact, studying each piece of equipment before either destroying it or incorporating it into their own systems. They moved like scientists conducting experiments, methodically testing the defenses of each world before overwhelming them with precisely calculated force. Refugee fleets streamed toward the galactic core, carrying survivors who told stories that challenged every assumption about galactic warfare. The aliens did not negotiate, did not communicate, and did not show mercy to those who surrendered. They simply arrived, studied, conquered, and moved on to the next target with mechanical efficiency. Intelligence reports suggested the invaders were mapping Council territories and military capabilities with the thoroughness of beings who planned to stay. Their technology was so advanced that traditional defensive strategies proved worthless, and their numbers seemed endless as more ships poured through whatever portal had brought them from another galaxy. In the depths of his desperation, Chancellor Vextar authorized what he had sworn never to do. A message was prepared for transmission to human space, carefully worded to avoid admitting the Council's complete helplessness while hinting at opportunities for mutual cooperation and shared benefits. The response arrived within hours, through the human communication network that now connected most of the galaxy. Ambassador Carter's words were brief and devastating in their simplicity. Humanity appreciates the Council's interest in cooperation. However, we are currently engaged in our own activities and cannot spare resources for Council operations. The rejection hit Vexitar like a physical blow. For 3 millennia, his people had been the ones who decided which species deserved protection and which could be abandoned to their fate. Now they were the ones being dismissed with polite indifference, and the irony burned worse than any physical wound. Intelligence reports revealed why humanity claimed to be busy. While the Council had been retreating toward the galactic core, human ships had been moving in the opposite direction. They had established a network of sensor stations and defensive platforms along the galaxy's edge, creating an early warning system that the invaders had not yet discovered. More shocking were reports of human ships engaging the alien invaders in hit-and-run attacks throughout the outer systems. Using the same unpredictable tactics that had proven so effective against pirates, human vessels struck at invader supply lines and communication relays before vanishing into the darkness between stars. Captain Rodriguez had survived his ramming attack on the pirate flagship, though his cargo vessel had been completely destroyed. Now he commanded one of the new human warships, vessels built using technology, reverse-engineered from the ancient derelict and improved through months of combat testing against increasingly dangerous opponents. His ship, the Defiant, had engaged 3 invader scouts near the ruins of a Zalari mining station, using coordinated gravity well maneuvers to trap the alien vessels in a stellar debris field. The battle lasted 6 hours and ended with 2 invader ships destroyed and the 3rd captured intact, providing human scientists with their first close look at the technology that had conquered half the galaxy. Dr. Foster led the analysis team that studied the captured vessel, working with an urgency born from the knowledge that billions of lives depended on their success. What they discovered was both terrifying and hopeful. The invaders were not as invincible as they appeared, but their weaknesses could only be exploited by civilizations willing to think beyond traditional military doctrine. The alien technology was incredibly advanced, but also incredibly specialized, designed to counter specific types of attacks used by established galactic powers. Council energy weapons were useless because the invaders had evolved defenses specifically designed to handle such attacks. However, human weapons based on gravitational manipulation and kinetic impact could penetrate their shields because they represented approaches the invaders had never encountered. As Vorthak core worlds began falling to the relentless alien advance, reports filtered back to the Council of something unprecedented happening in human space. Dr. Foster had released a public statement that circulated throughout both Council and independent systems, transmitted through the free human communication network that reached every corner of known space. Humanity extends humanitarian aid to all refugees regardless of their government's past actions, the statement read. We offer sanctuary to any who seek it, and military cooperation to those willing to fight as equals rather than subjects. The defense of civilization requires the combined efforts of all free peoples, working together not as masters and servants but as partners united in common cause. The implications were clear and devastating to Council pride. Humanity was offering to help, but only if the ancient hierarchies that had defined galactic politics for millennia were abandoned in favor of true cooperation between equals. Refugee ships began changing course, heading not for the supposed safety of the galactic core, but toward human space where they would be welcomed regardless of their species or political affiliation. Celery crystal gardens found new homes on human agricultural worlds. Morden ocean dwellers established communities in the vast seas of human colonies. Even proud Vorthak military officers began arriving at human stations, bringing their tactical knowledge and centuries of combat experience to the growing alliance. Chancellor Vextar sat alone in his command chamber, watching the final defensive lines around his homeworld crumble before the alien onslaught. Pride warred with survival instinct as he faced the most difficult decision of his long life. His people could maintain their ancient supremacy and face extinction, or they could swallow 3,000 years of arrogance and accept help from the species they had mocked as primitive and worthless. The personal communicator on his desk chimed with an incoming message. The sender was listed simply as Carter, and the message contained no diplomatic formalities or political maneuvering. It was a simple plea from one leader to another, asking not for the salvation of an empire but for the chance to prove that even the most ancient powers could learn to change. Vextar's response would determine whether the Vorthak Empire died with its pride intact or survived. To see a galaxy where cooperation mattered more than conquest, where wisdom came from listening rather than commanding, and where sometimes the greatest strength was found in admitting you had been wrong.